Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and this is NFGeeks. Well, this video is for the NFGeeks discussion forum on Facebook because today is, or at least when I'm recording this, today is Theme Thursday, and Thursday is when I pick a theme for people to make videos about, if they choose to. And today's theme is about age and how age relates to personality type. And I picked this one because this is a topic I'm very interested in lots of different ways. And first of all, it goes back to my sort of mental health, psychology background, counseling background regarding development. Okay, I've always been into developmental theory. Find it very fascinating. Okay, and I like them all. I like Piaget, and I like Goldberg, and I like Keegan, and I like even Freud. I love Freud. So I'm very into development. How a person's self mind develops over time, and what does that mean through each stage. And one of the things that's important is for me is that it kind of relates to the last video I made about communication and accepting people. And what I mean by that is that you have to accept a person at their developmental stage, because it is the same principle that your developmental stage is where a lot of your thinking and ideas and language are, and a person can't think beyond their stage. Okay, you can't you can't think and act and see the world in a stage you haven't directly experienced yet. Okay, you can maybe understand it in terms of some abstract sense, but you can't actually truly understand the experience of it and really live through it. One of the examples I give when I teach Intro to Psych is that it's kind of irrational and selfish to have expectations of empathy from like a 5-year-old. Okay, nothing upsets me more than when I'm in a mall and I hear a parent sort of, screaming at a 5-year-old and saying, "Didn't you know that mommy was going to be angry when you did?" No, the kid didn't know. The kid is 5. Kid has no clue what you're feeling. Okay, ahead of time. Cannot possibly go there. 5-year-olds are very egocentric. That's where their stage of development is, and you can't expect them to understand other, let alone the complex emotions of an adult. Because of where they are at 5 years old. So, we're all sort of at our stage, developmental stage, and that says something about how we process. And to understand another person is to understand their stage, to the best, or that they're at a certain stage of development. Okay. Now, crisscross this with personality type, and this gets a lot more fascinating, at least for me. It gets a lot more fascinating. And that is because there's sort of interesting ways to look at this. One of the things that fascinates me, and and really I see it all the time, is how type is consistent through age, through development. So even though we're developing into these different versions of ourselves and different ways of seeing the world and different consciousnesses, if you will, the type maintains, okay, through time. I've met people younger than me, even teenagers, even children, who are of a type and pretty consistent in type. I asked this question on the forum, what were some things you did as a kid that were reflective of your type? Because one of the ways I think you've been typed right is that if you can look back in your childhood and see the type, then, before you even knew anything about this, then that's a good, you've been typed correctly. You found your type. But type is consistent, and it's consistent into older years, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I've met older people in their types and totally consistent. Okay, completely consistent in their type. I know an INFP in his 80s, and boy, he is INFP to the max. Very, very sensitive. But he's an INFP through and through. There's no, question about it. So that fascinates me how it goes straight through. Now, at the same time, though, if you put the two together, even though the type is, constant, over time, it's still, bound to developmental stages. So, there's a way that ENFP sees everything at 5, and a way an ENFP sees things at 10 and 20 and 30 or whatever. So there's still sort of this developmental change that all the types go through as they're going through the developmental stages of life, in terms of everything else that goes on. And so that kind of, that's really fascinating for me, especially as I look back on my own life. And so what I want to talk about in this video is really just to talk about the current developmental stage I am at as an ENFP. So, and that's interesting because I'm in my mid-40s, or I'm approaching my mid-40s. I'm going to be 44 in about 2 weeks. And being, in this stage is very important, especially for a man, because all sorts of reevaluations go on. And that's also important to know that there are also, specific gender, developmental paths where things happen and have, similar impacts but different impacts, okay? So it's not exactly the same, but things happen at the same time, but they're not the same things, okay? So one of the things that happens to men at this age is midlife crisis. And midlife crisis is when you sort of, have a transformative event in your life where you start reevaluating everything, and you start thinking about the life you had, and all the mistakes and all the horribleness, and where you're going and all this, and you have sort of a real serious breakdown about it, okay? I think women are insensitive to it sometimes because of the outcomes sometimes of midlife crisis. Sometimes men do not go through midlife crisis very well at all, and they do all sorts of horrible, stupid things because they can't handle whatever is going on. And this is where they sort of regress to being 20, and they buy a convertible and they start screwing 20-year-olds, or try to screw 20-year-olds. Whatever. But they end up doing all sorts of stupid, horrible things. And so, I think it gets misinterpreted. But not every man ends up that way, okay? Ends up doing horrible things. But every man does go through a midlife crisis. Between 40 and 55, something hits and really shakes you up and turns your whole life upside down, and the whole way you view life upside down, and everything becomes nonsensical, and and you start questioning, is nihilism correct? And that's what I went through. So that's relevant because I'm at a place now in my mid-40s where I'm sort of having, or at least I was, not so much now, but having existential crisis about being an ENFP, and what does it mean to be middle-aged in ENFP and all that. So, for example, one of the things, and this is something sort of a joke I say about INFP and ENFP, is that, INFPs are born elderly. They're sort of born grandparents already, in their ways and the way they present themselves and all that. And ENFPs are sort of perpetually 8 years old, regardless of, where they are in life in terms of time, place, whatever. Sort of just perpetually operating on this 8-year-old level of play and all that. And that's certainly been the case with me throughout my life. I can't deny that. And that's probably the case I am now, and I probably come across that way too. And, people might even find it endearing and charming to a certain degree at any age. I think people do find that about ENFP. I don't know. So here's the midlife crisis thing. I don't know that I find it endearing and charming. I don't know that if I find it endearing and charming in me. I don't even know if I find it endearing and charming in you, the fellow ENFPs, even the ones that I know. And it doesn't mean you're not endearing and charming, of course. But I'm really questioning it now. Like, what does it mean to be this? And is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And this is what I mean about the developmental stage. I'm at that developmental stage in a man where you just sort of reassess all these things, and and that's because now up is down and left is right and hello's goodbye, and everything's sort of, chaos, and you can't find any foundation to truth or whatever. And so you end up questioning these things. To the younger audience, I want to pause for a minute, and that to the younger men, like, well, that's not going to happen to me. Yes, it is. In one way or another. Every man goes through this moment where he begins to start questioning, where he is and what's going on and who is he and what has he done and where is he going, and, it hits hard. Every man. It hits hard at different stages, different ages, I should say. Like it hit me at like 39, 40, like immediately just hit. And sometimes it doesn't hit a man until he's like 50, maybe even 55, but still, you're going to go through this point where, everything turns upside down in your life. So again, one of the things I'm thinking about is my own sort of, you know, childlike way in the world. And that doesn't mean I want to give it up or that it doesn't reap rewards or anything like that, but I'm pondering it in a way that I never pondered it before. Okay, that's important. Another thing I've been pondering, and I've done a bunch of videos on this, but this relates to age, is I've pondering my capacity for having intimate, loving relationships. Okay, and and by capacity, I'm using that term loosely, actually. Um, because ENFPs, one of my jokes is that ENFPs don't have husbands or wives. We just have a series of ex-girlfriends and ex-boyfriends. You know, that's that's what it's like to be an ENFP. Um, and so I say that jokingly, but I also say that like, not jokingly. There's a lot of ENFPs watching this going, oh, geez, that's right. I remember somebody told me, I think it was online in a messaging or something. And if you watch it, you know who you are. I'm sorry, I forgot. Whatever. I only remember the story. But somebody said that an ENFP had said, an ENFP in their early 20s, that um, that they had said, gee, I don't know what my problem is. I have all this love to give someone, and, because I'm an NF, I have all this love to give, but I just keep, like, flip-flopping through relationships. And this kid's, like, I don't know, the story is, like, 20. And I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, wait till you're 40, and you feel about it. Imagine, wait till you go through it for another 20 years. You've just been going through it for, like, 5, maybe 6. Imagine 25 years down the road, and you'd be asking yourself that question. That's because I was in my midlife crisis cynical mood when I said that. But it is a real something I'm thinking about at this age, okay? Because I certainly didn't imagine myself sort of being single in my mid-40s and thinking about that and wondering if I'm going to date again. Like, I can't believe I'm even asking myself this question about dating, okay? And when I look back at my life, I just have a series of failed relationships. I mean, granted, I'm an NF, so they're not like, flash in the pan one night stands. They're serious, intimate, long-term relationships, but, it's just one failure after another, and it seems very ENFP to me. And so what I'm asking myself at this age is that, Christ, do I want to go through this for another 20 years? Another 20 years of flip-flopping around, like this? Can I endure flip-flopping around, And then I start thinking to myself, like, are ENFPs just incapable of this? Are we the NFs who are capable of the love and the intimacy, but not the, not the, the ability to construct a long-term relationship, And that's not saying I don't have personal issues with my long-term relationship stuff. Of course I do. What I'm really trying to say, though, is a part of that relates to the consistency of ENFP over my life. When I look at all the mistakes and everything, they're all ENFP mistakes, all of them. So, I have to factor in ENFP when it comes to all these things. And, that's a concern of mine, at this age. And I'm in a place where NFs get, at any age, and this is where there's consistency over time, at some point all NFs kind of give up on love, for at least temporarily or in their mind permanently, where they just say, this hurts too much. As much as I want to have that special connection, this is just the pain is outweighing the, the positive, consequences of the attempts, So there's always a point where NFs go and hide from love and relationships and just, avoid it because it's so painful. And, I'm wondering if that's where I am now with this. And again, this is the midlife thing, because I never thought of myself this way as ENFP. Prior to this, I was sort of happy-go-lucky, and yeah, I'm an NF, and, I'll have love and all that. But now I'm in my mid-40s, I'm coming out of the midlife crisis stage, and, I'm questioning that, and that means, and this is why it's important, I'm questioning my own ENFP foibles, and, is this a good thing, is it a bad thing? What do I do about this? Part of it is a self-consciousness that comes in a middle age. I am this ENFP, and I have these limitations, did a video about that, and what do I do about this? What can I do about this? How do I learn to cope with this? So, and again, what makes it specific to my type too is that I'm sort of 8-year-old happy-go-lucky person, and this all these thoughts, as deep as they are interfering with that part of me that I also liked at the same time, But ENFPs are a lot deeper in thinking in that, I don't know, we get credit for, I think. So, but these two things are sort of clashing at this age. My ENFP sort of depth and my ENFP sort of happiness are kind of in they're sort of in conflict, which is something that hadn't happened previously. And again, I'm attributing that to my age, to the age I am right now, which is in my mid 40s. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when I'm elderly, I may have a totally different opinion about this. In fact, I probably will, because I'll be at that developmental stage. I certainly had different opinions about this going backwards in developmental stages. I didn't think this way at 30. I thought love was just a given at 30, and 20 and whatever. So that's that's where I am with this. So I want to hear your opinions about age. It doesn't have to be about your life the way I just talked about now, but I am very interested in this issue of type and age and development. And hopefully you will all make videos too, and we can all have sort of a video dialogue about it. Okay, see you on the forum.